Oh God, let me close this. Um, all right, guys, this is a live broadcast coming straight at you from the Talkback depths, the archives. Let me just adjust my mic here so I can get a proper, you know. All right, here we go. Yeah, guys, this is a talkback episode with the Merc here on his own, just trying to conduct this scenario that we have going on. So obviously, look, there's been a lot of talk. Things are exciting in the Star Wars world these days. So I had to dust off my, my cap and get into the fray. Just to put out some thoughts out there, because there's been a lot of stuff that's been said about what's happened with Solo, and as you know from the previous videos that we've put up and conversations that we've had, I'm definitely one of the people that did find this sort of surprising. I did find it sort of surprising. So, that being said, I think now we've gotten into a new phase because I think that the dust has officially settled. Like, we now officially know what the deal is, and that, obviously it was kind of a catastrophic situation with that picture. It's obviously the biggest failure that Star Wars has ever had, when it comes to the cash money. And now the question is what the hell is going on? And, I think we actually now have an official all-out war between Star Wars fans and Lucasfilm, which is crazy, This is the thing. And, I just wanted to start off here with the fact that, and this is something that people need to just understand about the way Star Wars works. This is the franchise. Okay, does that seem clear to you guys? The franchise. This is the blockbuster. This is the grandfather, the Don Daddy, Big Popper of the whole thing. So when you talk about franchises, this is the kingpin. The so-called bulletproof franchise. Like, you measure other franchises based on Star Wars. That's how it works. Star Wars was a thing that it's, when you talk about like banks that couldn't fail, like too big to fail, that's sort of what Star Wars really has been. Too big to fail. So when we have a scenario that we have now where what is going on, you really have to start looking at like, how did it come to this? Where, first of all, you're not guaranteeing that the success of future movies, because I'll kid you not. Like, if anybody thinks that episode 9 is going to come out and it's a guaranteed 2 billion or whatever, that is not the case anymore. Because listen, and I'm speaking as a fan, like, this is not me as anything other than like a Star Wars guy. I couldn't really watch Solo because I'm out. In fact, I was out at Force Awakens. I got forced to see Last Jedi by force, and it's beyond even reaffirming what I thought, going in. I was like, my God. And, my reasoning is all detailed in the talkbacks, of the reasons why I had an issue with this thing. It's all detailed there. But I think the crazy thing that is going on now, which is what I sort of saw happening, but has now got into to an apex, is the battle that you have between Star Wars fans and Lucasfilm. Now, let me just say some things that I think are very obvious to a lot of people that I think confused a lot of guys is, why would you antagonize your base? You see, the only reason why God, I've got some messages coming in here. Let me see who's trying to get in touch with me. The only reason why, give me 1 second, guys, somebody coming through on the hotline. The only reason why Star Wars is where it is today is because of the fans. They're the ones who kept it alive. You see what I'm saying? They're the ones who kept it alive. So you have a scenario where the guys who are the reason why this thing even existed as long as it has and is surviving as long as it has are the very guys that you're trying to disconnect. They're the ones who have even primed their children to be interested in the picture. They're the ones who've primed the kids. So even if the very children that you're going after in order to get them to support the franchise are actually being primed by the excitement that their parents had for it. So it's a very confusing thing because listen, this is the way I view it, right? If you make the original, the first thing, Force Awakens comes out, right? And the whole point of that is to discard with people like me and all the fans who are old guys with bald patches, you know, and you want to get the new guys because we don't matter. I'm like, okay, but then why are you making nostalgia? Because nostalgia doesn't really mean anything to new people. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. It's like, if you want to do that, then you sort of have to kick off with completely new things that are going to excite the new audiences and do combat with things like Fast and the Furious and the Marvel movies. But if you're trying to ride the wave of nostalgia with Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, then you need to actually respect the old fans who care about those characters and respect the characters that those fans care about. You see what I'm saying? So you're almost shooting yourself in the foot if you then throw something out there and then disrespect the fans and those characters. Or first, let's even do it in order. You disrespect those characters. The fans then complain, and then you disrespect the fans for complaining that you disrespected the characters that they care about. Guys, let me ask you a question. Does any of that make any sense? Does any of that make any sense? It doesn't. That's the problem. So it's like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. So you have a scenario where, like, okay, you know, you want to have us, but then you want to do away with the past, which doesn't really work. And I think that's where therein lies the issue. And I'm going to break down another couple of points that I think are very important, but I think that was the first big issue. It's like, forget the feminism, you know, misogyny that's been going on, the race stuff, all of that. Forget all of that. On a basic level, you have to engage with your fan base. We are the lifeblood of this thing. The most important people, the VIPs, the MVPs. Us. First, the guys who are like old, who are so-called and inverted in quotes, old fogies. You don't build a house without a foundation. And the thing is, like, the amount of power that you have when people have been dedicated to something for decades, that's a lot of power. So if you just at least make those guys happy, you can't lose. And there are millions of us. So that was the first thing that I was like, okay, guys, that's mayhem. But then when you see the scenario that when people complain and then you've got people actually coming out directly insulting the fans and calling them racist and misogynist and sexist and things. And I'm like, wait a minute, are you actually listening to what people are actually saying? Don't sort of mash everybody together and then talk about, hey, we're going to just smash all the misogynists, which do exist, by the way. So let's get that clear. There are very racist Star Wars fans out there, extremely, who even the concept of having a black stormtrooper blew their brains off. They exist. So let's not pretend they don't exist. They exist, okay? There are very sexist Star Wars fans out there who do not want any woman in the movie that aren't like wearing bikinis and like being subservient to the male characters or not even there at all. They exist, okay? There are very, like, what other ones? There are very homophobic Star Wars fans who do not want any idea or concept of a gay character, of a lesbian character, of a bisexual. They do not want to even think about the possibility of that. Okay, they exist. Now, the question is, what percentage of Star Wars fans actually account for those sorts of people? And it's a very cheesy, cheap thing to do, to try and like take those groups and combine them with all the other guys who actually have legitimate issues. It's crazy. Because listen, I'm not denying like those guys exist and they're real. But let's not like mash everybody together with them. You know, let's not do that. Let me see what's going on in this chat room here. And guys, you know, let me know in the chat room if my mic is actually working. I just type yes or no to just let me know if my microphone is actually coming through because I have no idea. But yes, anyway. So that's the first thing is like it's very, very low to just label everybody as sexist, racist, bigots who can't accept, you know, what the direction Star Wars is going in and all that is very, very bad. And actually it makes me angry because I'm not, look, anybody who knows, like I'm literally the demographic that you're supposedly trying to defend. Okay. I mean, other than the sexuality thing, but like it's like from me, right? When people are talking about this stuff, the mere fact that I know so many fans who fall into all these groups, whether they're women, whether they're gay, whether they're black, whether they're Asian and so forth, who all still say the same things that, man, what the hell is going on with Star Wars, man? You know? So it's madness, like the insults. Like I got so annoyed, right, of all the stuff that was being said about us that I actually stopped going on Twitter looking at Star Wars stuff because like, it just got me annoyed because I'm sitting here, I'm thinking that, hey, I wrote, and listen, I have a Twitter account, right? I wrote a 32-point Twitter post of all the things I had problems with Last Jedi. 32 points. Guys were messaging me telling me that, look, man, that was on the money. 32 points. 32. That's a lot. And that wasn't even all of them. That's not even taking into account all the things. And these are not things that, oh, you know, you're nitpicking. I'm like, no, this is just basic Star Wars stuff. Like if you're a Star Wars guy, there's just some basic things that you've got to take care of. Just some basic things. So when you're looking at the Solo thing, I'm like, listen, it was inevitable that it was going to come to a head. That things were going to like it was going to just come to a head. Like people were going to get very angry. You know, there's just no doubt in my mind that fans and listen, and that's the reason why I said that it's the OG franchise. Don't mess with Star Wars fans, guys. These guys are too real. Like, because Star Wars is too important. I'm telling you that me personally, Star Wars at a point was my life. It was literally my life. There's a point in my life where there was nothing more important than this thing called Star Wars here, okay? And listen, people are like, oh, you're so sad. That's so depressing. Like, oh, you don't have, I'm like, okay, yeah, thanks, guys. Cheers. Okay, good for you. That's just the reality, okay? And and listen, there's a difference between Star Wars fans. There's the people who delve into all the extended universe stuff. I'm not one of those people. I'm strictly the movies and everything surrounding the movies. That's me. Like, I'm not into that whole Ashoka and like all the Clone Wars cartoons. I'll watch a few of them, and people say the Clone Wars were very good, but I just really like what my imagination can do to fill in what's in between the movies. Like, I'm one of those sorts of people. I really, really like that. And I don't want to be told every little thing that's happening in every corner of the galaxy far, far away. That's just me. And everybody's different. But I know there's millions of Star Wars fans who are like me, who prefer the purity of just the movies that George Lucas was putting out, whether you like them or not, and so on and so forth, okay? Point in case is that they're really big deals. So I think it's very strange that you have this sort of battle because it's one that you can't win. You can't bite the hand that feeds you. And I think the confusing thing that people got backwards is thinking that the fans are beholden to Lucasfilm. You're not. Lucasfilm is actually beholden to the fans. The other franchises are kind of different because you can sort of get away with being silly with them. Star Wars is like a family, where the father of the family was George Lucas. He was all the Star Wars fans' father, who we were all angry with because of what he did with the prequels. but he's still like your sort of father figure. You see what I'm saying? So you can't just come into this sort of family situation and then just like start throwing things around. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. And I'm actually going to talk very specifically about the sort of race issue surrounding Star Wars, and a very different sort of perspective on the race issue, because I don't actually believe that it was a good idea to indirectly or directly make white men the enemy in Star Wars, because they are the ones who actually are the cornerstone of the fan base. That's crazy to say, but it's the truth. The main guys, the cornerstone of this franchise are white males. That's just fact. Whether we like how that happened, that's one conversation. Whether we like, how it's perpetuated, that's another conversation. Whether we like the way that a section of that group behaves in the fandom, that's another question. But the fact still remains. The bulk of Star Wars fans, who are the most the most vociferous, the most dedicated, the people who drive this thing, the bulk of that group are white males. It's like, because they were represented in this product by the most iconic characters in Star Wars are the white guys. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. Arguably Anakin Skywalker. You know what I'm saying? So listen, listen, and this is all about strategy. It's all about strategy. If you want to go and change that, and you're Lucasfilm and you're saying, look, this is wrong. We can't have a franchise that is just driven by one demographic. Okay, that's fine. That's all well and good. But you don't just do that in just like with a ball and chain and like a hammer and sledgehammer and just go in there and just like boom, boom, and then you start attacking those guys. It doesn't even make sense. You need to approach it and say, listen, the fan base, basically white guys are a big deal when it comes to Star Wars fan base. So if we're going to come in and try and shift this thing, we have to do it gently. We have to make sure we respect that group and don't make that group feel like they're getting antagonized for just existing. Listen, I'm just saying this on a business standpoint. I'm not saying whether I agree or not, because I'm all against all that nonsense of like racism. It's just stupid. That being said, if you're a tactician and you're looking at the base, you're going to be like, yo, these are who the fans, a lot of the fans are white men. So we can't create a scenario where like white men, rightly or wrongly, feel like they're being labeled as the enemy in the franchise that they're the driving force of. That's foolish, because then you end up with the situation you've got right now, where you've got very legitimate Star Wars fans who are white guys who are like, I can't stand this thing because everybody's making me out like I'm racist and I'm misogynist and I'm prejudiced and I'm homophobic. But in reality, I just want a good Star Wars movie. That is just the truth. Because let me be real here, okay? You can't deal with racist people are sick. They've got mental illnesses. So you can't deal with those guys. So forget them. However, if you made a proper quality Star Wars film with a female lead, for example, on the level of like Ripley in Alien, or even Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road, do you really think anybody would be complaining? Like, nobody would have anything to say. Like the issue is what the character is in, like Rey and all that sort of, like the issue is like how much it's getting drilled into people's throats and like hammered into their faces, and like, this is how you should think, and all men are useless and clowns. And so even as a guy, when I'm watching this stuff, I'm like, my God, I'm like, I mean, I get what you're trying to do, but you're like, all the guys are idiots. It's crazy. So I think by the time you get to Solo, the levels of bad blood you have going on, and the fact that obviously the whole Rian Johnson versus the fans thing, it has not gone well. It hasn't really helped the situation. But because you have all that negative energy, it's just now spilling out, whereby fans have given up. They're like, they don't even believe that there is any possibility of salvaging the situation without I don't know, Kathleen Kennedy leaving and like Dave Filoni getting involved, which I think is always like a weird one because people always listen. Let me tell you this, and I think it's a very precarious thing to say. Oh, put Dave Filoni and everything's going to get fixed. Remember what we said about Kazdan in 2012? Does anybody remember that? Irving Kershner as well getting involved. Like everybody looked to, oh, look at what they did when Empire Strikes Back and some of the great things. I'm like, yeah, but what difference did they make for Force Awakens? Did it make any difference? It doesn't matter. Yes, I mean, arguably, what we're talking about here is like, the top person. So I guess if you believe that Dave Filoni's decision making is going to somehow make a massive difference to the way things are going down, fair enough. But I'm wary of that because I feel like, look, there might be problems like of these things that are more far reaching, especially when you have a situation where you have direct opposition between the studio and the fans. I think once you see that sort of thing occurring, you really have to, it gives you pause and say, this is deep because somebody's got to be sort of validating this stuff and like, and allowing this to happen. Somebody's got to be allowing it to happen. So if somebody is letting this sort of be the status quo, who are you changing? Like, who are you shifting around? Because I've never seen anything like this before. Like I've seen fans being angry, but when fans are angry at DC is always like very pragmatic about the responses that they gave. Even when it was Batman v Superman, like no studio has been attacked more than the DC, than DC and all of that. Ooh. Okay. Just got a little message here. We've got to really start looking at a lot of these things. So yeah, I mean, look, that's the sort of thing that confuses me. It's sort of the way that, Marvel would deal with like, when Iron Fist came out and there was all like the dissent about that, the way they handled it, DC who have been the most maligned, attacked. Warner Brothers and DC have been attacked like crazy by their fans, and I'm a big Batman guy and, I know what I've said. But the way that they've handled it has been very different. Like, it just seems so antagonistic. Like, it's like from the Kazdan son thing where he came out and the whole pansexual thing with Lando and, what JJ said about the fans and and Kathleen Kennedy and the Force is female. Like, I'm just, listen, Ron Johnson as well. Like, I don't get it. I'm just like, guys, like, what? There's nothing to be gained from. You might as well just not say anything. Like it's like it's actually better to just not respond than to respond by actually attacking guys, unless, and this is my theory, unless they underestimated the number of fans that felt that way. So they just thought that because the movie made so much money, the number of fans who are saying negative things is small. I don't think they realize that a lot of the money that you made from these movies were fans who were upset, but because they loved Star Wars so much, they felt compelled to still go out and see it in the hopes that things were going to be rectified. And I think what you're now seeing now is that after 3 movies, so like we had Force Awakens, Rogue One, and Episode 8. After those 3, people had there's a big percentage that were like, okay, I'm through, I'm done. This is not, it's actually getting, once the whole Luke thing happened, I think that the Luke Skywalker thing was a tipping point. I said after that, I mean, it was like guys were like, okay, look, I'm out. And I think now you're seeing a lot of those fans who were really just skating along and they really weren't happy with what was happening, but they were still paying and watching the stuff anyway, have finally said, listen, we now have no Han Solo, we have no Luke Skywalker, we have no Princess Leia, and Chewbacca is just a sidekick who doesn't do anything at all. R2-D2 and C-3PO mean nothing. Like, we now literally have nothing that we want to come back for. Because I think it's fairly unanimous that most of the old school fans, like, well, let me not say most, a very big percentage really don't like the new characters. So they're not like getting behind them. So when you're talking about like what new character is there a mass fan base of? Not one. Finn, for sure not. Rey is completely split. It's actually more split now than it was during the Force Awakens time. I think after The Last Jedi, like things really fractured. You know, the characters from Rogue One are all dead anyway, so that doesn't matter. Um, so really, Kylo Ren is hate. Kylo Ren is a weird one because like it's almost like a character that has so much potential, but the way that the character is being handled is hated. Because Kylo Ren could actually be really cool if he'd actually won some of his fights and was as good as he's supposed to be. But now it's too late. You can't actually salvage him because he's so rubbish at everything he did as a character. Like he failed at everything. So he's not somebody that you can like. What are you going to do? You can't go back in time and redo the movies and like have him win. So you really don't really have anything. Like nothing people are coming back to. And I think now it's like Solo was. Listen, I'll be honest with you. Like I feel to a degree, Solo was a fall guy for the situation. Like it's unfortunately became the, how do I say it? It's like it's ended up taking the brunt of all the things that happened, and it's unfortunate, well, it's not unfortunate. I think it just had to happen. And I think, nobody really wanted a Solo movie per se, who really wanted a Han Solo movie? Like ironically, if Obi-Wan was the movie coming out now, it would have done a lot better just because of who the character is. But again, it just belies the same issue that you have. It's like really so far, everything that's been made is relating to the old trilogy, the original trilogy. Everything, So it's just really weird, like this whole thing about kill the past and like, move on. And it's like, it's very confusing because you're not moving on. Like everything is connected to the past. So I think it's weird to make projects that are actually actively destroying the very foundations upon which you're trying to build. Because it'd be one thing if you automatically just went forward off the top. Like you just started making movies off the top and you weren't really looking back and you're like, look, we're doing new things. At least you'd preserve the integrity of the old stuff. When you like actively make entire films destroying the old stuff to such a degree that we can't even look back at the old stuff and like it. Like somebody even said about this whole pansexual thing in Atlanta, say, listen, that sort of messes things up a little bit because what people sort of liked about the Lando Calrissian character was the sort of link that he might have had relationship-wise with Princess Leia, like afterwards, and like all this sort of things. Like it was always kind of interesting where that could have gone. So I think people might have got a little bit annoyed that that was even being brought into question. It's like, look, you can have a pansexual other character. Why does it have to be this guy? You see what I'm saying? Like, I think maybe that was a factor because I'm like, yeah, does anybody really care? Listen, I just feel like there's a percentage of fans who don't really care about there existing of a pansexual character existing within the Star Wars universe. I'm like, okay. But I think, to be honest, there really hasn't been a lot of sexuality themes in the Star Wars universe as a whole. So I think for sure people feel uncomfortable with that being introduced to something that was such a straightforward family thing that they're like, why are we now talking about sexuality in Star Wars? It's a touchy area because you could almost say that, well, if there's like gay fans and they don't have any characters that sort of represent them because all the characters are just straight and they're having relationships with opposites gender things. And I'm like, okay, so you sort of understand that to a degree, but I feel like you've almost got to make that organic to what you're doing. Like I think taking old characters and twisting them to fit that is very, very messed up. It's like, why would you do that? Why don't you just make a new character and have that character sort of inherently be that thing you want and just roll with that, if you must. Like I think that was just a weird thing to even put out there. But anyway, look, that is my lot. It's the end of the half hour, it's been fun. And, I will be coming back on here to natter and throw some thoughts out from time to time. So definitely subscribe and you will be made aware of when I will be flapping my lips on this channel. And yes, Grim Fandango, yes, they definitely morphed Luke to fit the plot. They morphed all the characters to fit the plot. That's just the bottom line. Anyway, guys, that's it. Bay out, Spielberg in.